All right, YouTube. Well, some people are focused on Trump's speech involving international banking and pretending that that somehow equates to Judaism. Other less medicated individuals are perhaps more focused on the latest Podesta leak, which is that the Clinton campaign, literally in its own words, wants a compliant and unaware citizenry. And exploits the media for their own gain, literally attempting to pay them off to try to stop Trump, because they realize, in the context of this email, it makes sense, that Trump's celebrity-style grandstanding allows him to manipulate the media. And therefore, to get out ahead of it, they simply have to cut the head off the snake, I guess, in their estimation, and prevent the media from ever positively or necessarily even negatively covering him, to try to ignore him to the best of their ability. Very dishonest policy. It shows a level of legacy media collusion that goes well beyond even what I would have estimated was ever happening in any prior election cycle. It's remarkable that more people aren't up in arms about this and cutting the cable, so to speak, with the TV and newsprint media. It thus becomes clear what the New York Times, for instance, is doing. Even Joe Scarborough on MSNBC questioned the timing of these allegations against Trump. We then realize that at least one of the people coming forward may very well be a secretary at the Clinton Foundation. No, that's not at all suspicious. No, I think that it is. No, I think it's very, very questionable. I think it's very strange that all of these things are happening. I find it additionally strange that people hear the word international banks and their immediate assumption is that it has something to do with Trump is secretly a Nazi. So you're making the inference that banks equals Jews, in other words. Well, doesn't that make you a little bit of a stereotyper? I'd think that it does. We can talk all day about the role of banks in various crises around the world. I like to think that sometimes it's hands-off, many times it's hands-on, and at all times they're at least dishonest because that's the business that they're in. But that doesn't make him a Nazi. It certainly doesn't make him the next Hitler. It's additionally funny to see people complain about how Trump is mentally retarded and has no skills, and yet somehow he's Hitler. Okay, then how is he actually going to fulfill the role of Hitler and start another Holocaust, I guess, in your estimation? Again, rather funny. But we have Podesta, and it's mysterious as to why people aren't. I would think that this would be the top leak so far. Apparently, they'd rather talk about Clinton's Qatari donation. WikiLeaks pointed out with that, by the way, that the same news that was actually reporting on the $1 million donation he got for his birthday didn't report on the separate leak that showed that the Clintons were acutely aware of the fact that the Qataris were funneling money to ISIS. Also very, very dishonest, because it's a no-brainer. It is connected with that story. Put two and two together. It's not a stretch of the imagination to see really what's going on there. Well, we have Podesta openly proclaiming, this comes on the tail of calling any Catholic politician or official that wanted to meet with Clinton is just a needy Latino. There's strike one. Catholics are superstitious and we don't like them and we're trying to infiltrate the Catholic Church. That's a big strike number two. Now we find out that through their manipulation of the media, Podesta and Clinton and all of the others involved in their campaign literally want the citizenry to comply, to be compliant, to just sit the fuck down, shut the fuck up, and go back to sleep sort of mode, and unaware. Now, if this sort of email had been released during the Bush years, back when the leftists were all anti-war, anti-big government, they would have been assembled by the tens of millions outside of the White House to demand that he resign. They would have. I find it very strange that more of these people aren't up in arms about it, seeing that it's coming from the Clinton camp. I say, of course, Clinton is Bush. They're the same thing. They're also Obama, Herbert Walker Bush, Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton. They're all exactly the same. This is the period of American politics post-Carter, where it's all a bunch of neoconservatives and neoliberals. They are the same thing. They're part of the same group. They take money from the same people. They peddle the same failed ideas. When Obama comes out and he says, oh, let's keep up the tradition that for 240 years has served us so well, you got to realize it's only been a few decades since the tradition of politics is the way that they've been operating for the last few decades have gone. That's a new tradition in the United States. It takes off from the paleoconservatives of the early military-industrial complex era and the actual social liberals of that era, who essentially agreed with the Republicans, by the way, on virtually every element of foreign policy, the only differentiation being that they wanted to wage a struggle for civil rights. That was the only real difference at the time. The Republicans at first were receptive. They got taken over by people under Nixon who weren't. The Democrats became receptive around the same time, stealing the issue for political reasons, but they took up the issue, that is true. Other than that, though, on foreign policy, they all agreed that the Red Scare wasn't over, we needed to fight communism. They disagreed maybe a little bit on the methodology. They all basically agreed on where the tax rate should be. It was barely an issue at the time. They all agreed that America should come first, that we should defend our country, that we should defend our allies, that we should expand alliances when possible. Now we've got this situation where the Republicans and Democrats are basically exactly the same once again. Only this time they agree in spirit with screwing the American people harder and harder. They don't think we should defend our nation. They don't think that it should be America first, certainly. They believe that it should be corporations and international movements first for the sake of all mankind because of invisible and non-existent boogeymen like climate change. And I do say non-existent in the sense of thinking that they could do anything about it if it's real. I've taken up an ambivalent line. It doesn't even matter. Science now agrees that if it is indeed man-made climate change, it's too late. We can't do anything about it unless the whole world goes carbon negative. You think that's going to happen? It'd take us 50 years to rig up the kind of situation under the most optimistic conditions in order to do that. It's pointless. It no longer makes sense. I'm as environmentalist as they come on cleaning up this planet, but that issue's a dead one. It's a dead issue because they've already issued their warnings. They've already said we've passed the point of no return. So there you have it then. It's non-issue. Mankind will, according to their estimation, no longer exist in a couple hundred years, because the world will no longer be habitable for our race. Well, if that's the case, I guess it's no different than a nuclear war, which looks more and more inevitable under Clinton. Anyway, it's rather jarring to see the campaign manager of especially a Democratic campaign, because that's not the way Obama ever spoke. That's not the way that people like Jimmy Carter certainly ever spoke, or Mondale or Dukakis or any of these other individuals. Not Dukakis, it wasn't Dukakis a Republican running against Clinton? Can't remember. Nobody remembers him. That's how bad he was. But no, the Democrats, not that many years ago, were, we want peace, we don't want domestic surveillance, we've got to support people's privacy, and so on and so on forth. Now you have the campaign manager of the Democratic Party's nominee talking about wanting to use the media to manipulate people to keep them compliant and unawares of what's going on. Openly stating this. Openly stating this. Isn't that a little bit strange to people? I think it's a little bit strange to me. It's just another reason why I could never support Hillary Clinton. Not that necessarily the Republican Party has anything other than a stark track record of doing the same thing. They did. Look at what happened under W. W helped to start all of this nonsense. What little he didn't himself started under Bill Clinton, has all continued under Obama regardless, and it'll probably more or less continue regardless of who's elected. But it is now fairly clear at this point that Clinton is the face of everything that anyone who hated Bush ever hated. She's the face of everything that anyone who ever hated Obama has hated, or Bill Clinton. This spans both parties. There's a reason why so many Republicans have endorsed Hillary Clinton. And it isn't because Hillary Clinton is a better candidate. It isn't because she's more honest, she's more thoughtful, or thought-provoking. It's because she's part of that same corrupt central core of D.C. that's been in power basically since around the time that Hillary Clinton first entered the political circus. Or a little bit before that. We're talking about the mid to late Reagan era. Early stage Reagan was a maverick. Later stage Reagan, after getting jerry-rigged with Herbert Walker Bush, became little more than a confused neocon who was nothing more than a puppet at that point because he had dementia. That's the truth. Reagan meant well when he first got into politics. Once he got demented, other people were pulling the strings. In his second term, certainly. If you look at the debate in his first term, before he was elected, He's sharp, he's aware, he knows what he's saying, he's well spoken. You look at his debate with Mondale, and the only reason why Mondale could have possibly lost is that Mondale was seen as boring. Because it was Ronald Reagan running against him and people generally approved of him. That's the only reason why. You could tell that Ronald Reagan, the gears in his head weren't quite spinning as fast as they used to. He became a puppet. Herbert Walker took over on the successes of Reagan. He did nothing. He got forced out. Bubba Bill comes along. He does the same thing. The same warmongering, the same fiscal policies. It's exactly the same. George W. comes along. He does the same as his dad and Bubba Bill. Obama comes along. He does the same thing that all the others have done. Clinton comes along. She wants to continue doing the same things that all these others have done. There's no change whatsoever. When Obama said change we can believe in, there was no change. Gitmo's still open. Our troops are still in the Middle East. We still have a mass domestic surveillance apparatus that's unconstitutional. What changed? That's what I would ask. Other than they decided they could make money in Cuba, so they'd finally end the embargo, they haven't really changed any policy. Other than Common Core, which apparently even Hillary Clinton's not stupid enough to think that that's a good idea. We have another leaked email where she calls Common Core a crazy idea. I actually agree with her for once. But then again, anyone, no matter how stupid they are, has to see. Even Obama, at this point, probably has to admit Common Core has been a complete abysmal failure. Doesn't make sense. Certainly not teaching anyone proper mathematics. We're teaching them relativist Marxist math that doesn't actually work. You try applying that in a scenario where you're practicing architecture or engineering, you're going to cause something to collapse or blow up. So I would hazard a guess, yeah, Hillary Clinton, at the very least, she has enough IQ points to know that Common Core doesn't work. So yeah, more leaks. We're going to get them every day, folks. You don't think this is going to take a toll on the Clinton campaign? As though her opponent was magically done because of a tape from 10 years ago? I don't think so. I think it's starting to have an effect. You just haven't seen it reflected in polling yet because none of the polls that only come from that post-debate period have actually culminated and been aggregated on RCP yet. They haven't been released. They're not done taking those polls. They span a course of, sometimes a few days to a week. Well, we got a couple more days to wait before we can get a more accurate reading of what's going on. The younger voters that are so critical to the Democratic Party, I don't think that many of them are going to be left supporting the Democratic ticket come a couple weeks from now. I honestly don't. I find it very funny that people in the lamestream media who still think that they're relevant despite not being relevant are bothering to cover for Hillary Clinton. At some point, could have enough scandal that even they just abandon ship. They say, enough's enough. Yeah, okay. We rescind our endorsement. We're not endorsing anyone. They both suck. Vote for Johnson or something. It would matter more if they did that. He'd see a bump of a point or two. Really, Clinton's the establishment candidate, though. She's the one that ends up suffering. It's just the way it is. Even if you don't like Donald Trump, even if you do like Hillary Clinton, you do have to admit, she's the one with the political experience. She's the one with the political brass behind her. She's the one that stands the most to lose as the result of scandals, specifically because she has been a career politician for so long. That's about all. Peace out.